Hello everyone and welcome to a conversation. Do you know, sometimes when the wife says she wants a conversation, it automatically sets up barriers. Isn't it funny? You know, you probably have the same thing, you know, if you've got a wife or maybe you've got a husband and they say to you, I think we need to have a conversation. Do you find that sort of riles you, doesn't it? It just gets you automatically into, defensive mode because you just know it's going to be some kind of meandering drivel that didn't require a conversation at all. Of course, if this bit gets onto the video, my wife might be very cross, but it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. It's only a YouTube video, isn't it? It doesn't matter. Anyway, hello and welcome. As you can see on the screen right now, we have a Monopoly board. It's not the Monopoly board to which I am used to. I have no idea. I think this is the American Monopoly board. In typical American fashion, instead of putting something that fits nice and easy on the Monopoly board, they go and put the massive, stupid name, which they've had to hyphenate, I guess. Mediterranean Avenue. Well, you could have found anything for that, couldn't you? But you went with the longest name. Oddly enough, I'm now looking around the board, and by a strange, it is strange by anyone's standards, this is the only square that you've gone with the highest. I mean, you know, name in the world. You could have just picked a town in Detroit because that's on its arse at the moment, apparently. Although it is getting finally getting rejuvenated farms, curiously, which is interesting because this kind of links into what we're talking about. So let's just imagine that this is the world as which that we can see around us, and we start off at Go, and Go is for argument's sake, it's in the year whenever. It's in the year where what's happened is we're starting to become a people now, and a people that not just live in one little village in which we all just maintain the crops to ensure that the people of the village can survive. But it's now a lot of villages. You know, there's a lot of villages around. There's this many villages, for argument's sake. I'll have to stop doing that where I move the mouse up, but it does that. It's weird, isn't it? So, you know, this little village here used to just be, old Detroit used to be a little village where people would, the people of that village would grow crops and make things, tools, whatever. And it was working fine. No one had an actual, paid job as such, because the nature of time back then, the nature of being in a village, it was about a community of people that would do things together. And the problem was, there were, of course, more communities opened. There was the community chest that opened. See what I did there? And Baltic Avenue, and lots of more communities started to form, and trade takes on a new sort of dimension, doesn't it? Because obviously now what happens is I can go to the village next door and say, well, look, I've got loads of carrots here, and you've got loads of sprouts. And they'll say, well, we love carrots. And we'll say, well, we can't stand sprouts. No one likes sprouts. Why would you even grow sprouts? Suffice to say, the trade agreement is set up in which we trade carrots for sprouts. But as time goes on, there's more and more people, and, it diversifies. There's more stuff. There's just more stuff to cater for. And eventually we end up realising that this trading goods for services and so on and so forth is becoming a bit of a logistical nightmare. Because, for example, I could say, well, look, I'll take your dog for a walk if you do this if you can get this guy to do this for me. It could be a never-ending chain. And so what happened was, in the end, we invented something that has been the bane of our existence. It was called money. Now, you may have heard of this. It's a kind of universal token, if you like, a token in which now I can simply say to you, well, look, instead of me giving you these awful sprouts for those carrots, why don't I just buy the carrots off you with this money, and then you can use that money to go off and buy some potatoes off someone else, because that's how that works. And so eventually an economy based around money was born, and the entrepreneur way back then, this guy here, this is our entrepreneur, and for argument's sake, we're just going to call him We're just going to call him Sir Alan Sugar, because it's no. The end of this video has no bearing on Sir Alan Sugar. It's just if I say a different name, you'll all be like, ugh. So it's Sir Alan Sugar, and he's like that. He lives in village number 1, and he's been, the money's come around, and his farm's been very successful, and he's got lots more money than the neighbouring farms. But he can see an opportunity. He says to himself, he goes, "Hang on a minute, I can see an opportunity here, because I can make their farms make more farm stuff. I can make it better." So he buys the farm. He buys all of the brownery that's there at the time. But as a result of that, he starts making even more money, and he discovers the thing. He thinks, well, actually, hang on a minute, I'm in a position here where not only can I buy stuff, I can fund it. I can, So he's generally, he's helping people out. He's giving money out, and eventually it turns out that Sir Alan Sugar now, and it's not really, it's just our ghost name for the character of Sir Alan Sugar. He's now at a point where he's like, you know what, forget this farming business, I'd be better off, because I'm helping support businesses, I'm practically funding everything. And so he decides in the end, that he's going to make something called a bank, and a bank is going to be somewhere where people can come along and they could maybe just borrow some money, to help build a business. And as well, if perhaps people have got excess money that they don't want to just keep lying around, they could bring it to the bank, and maybe they could let the bank look after it, and in return the bank could give them kind of money, interest, let's call it, and they would earn interest on that money, and everything would be great. Everything's great. Everyone's like, oh, this is brilliant, this. And obviously the bank now has got lots of money, so he can afford to basically fund more businesses. He's getting money on the money because of the interest, and this economy is really starting to take hold. And not only that, Sir Alan Sugar is like that, going, well, I've got this system now, it's working great here, I'm going to introduce it over to this next set of towns and villages, because it's really working quite well here. And obviously there's a tax there, probably somewhere along the line we're getting the government. Yeah, so Sir Alan Sugar, he's like that, great. And the government are forming, and they're like, well, we'll have a bit of that. Anyway, so he starts a railroad system, and by chance comes across 3 towns, and they're the same thing. They've not got, they're rudimentary in their banking system. It's not quite there. They've got a system. They've got a system of money, but that it doesn't interact with anyone else's system of money. It just doesn't interact. It's not quite the same. And so he says to himself, right, well, we've got 2 options here. He says, we could either have a bank in which I can trade both currencies, in which case I can dip my feet in both, both cities' things. So we could have a bank which we'll call it this. This is the bank in the middle at the moment. It's at the station, and on one side he's trading in pounds and pence, for argument's sake, and on the other side it's dollars and cents. And he's like that. Well, that's fine, and I'll be the middleman. And if anyone wants to buy any of their money, I can sell it to them for a little bit of profit, and vice versa. And also, I can represent a middleman, because by now I'm probably owning the railroad anyway, because it seems to be only 200 M, whatever that's supposed to mean. And do you think that's supposed to be? No, it can't be million, can it? How odd if it is. What do you Americans do when you play Monopoly? It seems terrible. Anyway, so Sir Alan Sugar now owns a bank which has got its feet in both things. He says to himself, you know what, it'd be a lot easier if you all just adopted the same currency, because then I wouldn't have to piss about trading cash. Plus, you would all get your goods at better rates, because now, there's no interest from it just makes everyone's life a bit easier. So there's a potential there for everyone to adopt the same currency. But meanwhile, he's still making lots of money from the pale blue towns that he took a chance with. Now, he avoids going to jail because, no one wants to go to jail just yet. In fact, what happens is he buys the jail. Yeah, that'll do. So he buys the jail, because that's great. And now all the criminals go to jail. That's got nothing to do with our story, because now he's set his eyes on here. He's discovered he can buy the purples. The purples, which are not Pall Mall. It's Virginia Avenue. Lovely. So he can buy them, and along with the electric company, for argument's sake, and he can also buy the next railroad, because he's making so much money off all of this. He's really doing quite well. So what he does is he doesn't buy them as such, but what he does is he invests in them. He starts to open another bank which can trade with these. But these people these are really rudimentary. These are they've not really got the concept of the money thing going off. So he comes in with his bank and introduces his banking system. He introduces it with the currency from here, the pounds and pence, and all the people rejoice because now it turns out that they can now do trading with other countries. It turns out they can go to this section, countries, whatever it is, towns, villages, people. All of these people now can trade with each other, thanks to the fact that we've got a banking system that's able to make this work for everyone. So I can now buy goods off you, you can buy goods off me, I can make some money off it, you can make money off it. We don't know what the logistics are, but that's what's gone on. He gets the railroad, he buys the orange, and eventually what happens is we get down to here, where we're now at a point where the Monopoly board is almost entirely run by our man here. Hello. Oh, we're getting somewhere now, aren't we? Because we're now at a point where this one man, we're going to say one man, he really represents 1%, doesn't he? I think we're getting there. He represents 1% of the people of the world, and he has arguably 98% of the Monopoly board, or shall we say the money of the world. And so the question is, well, what's left? He's only got 3, please. And don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that the places that are left in this analogy are going to be the most expensive places on the board, because as it happens, it's probably the opposite way round, and it'll probably be by now that everything that these brown ones are actually here, and it would have tailed off, so that we're now left with what would conceivably be brown ones. But for the sake of this discussion, let's just forget what I've just said, because I've probably made it all complicated now. I just assume that now all of this board has been run by the Sir Alan Sugar's bank. It's not, and again, it's not Sir Alan Sugar, but we want to keep it civil. So he's bought all of this. He now owns 98% of the money in the world, and we can see there's a few potential sort of issues here. For example, the one question is, well, how can 1% own 98%? But we've just seen how, though, isn't it? It turns out that 1% are entrepreneurs. They started it all off, and really, when we look at the world that we live in the grand scheme of things, we're not doing too bad. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all thank Sir Alan Sugar for his work. And again, this is a representative of whoever at the 1%. Not necessarily Sir Alan Sugar is that, but he's an entrepreneur, and these people have entrepreneurial characteristics, don't they? So anyway, there we go. So they've only got a few places left. Now, let's just mirror this with the modern day environment. There are a few places left that currently aren't, if you like, run by the big banks. This is what the World Bank, I think, is where we're going with this. So the question is it right that the World Bank now go into the remaining countries and take over the monetary system, so that then the World Bank is literally a bank of the world? And I suppose on one sort of side of the argument, you could see treachery and dishonesty in this assumption that that this now 1% really does own. Well, it could potentially own 100% of the because once he owns the board. Let's look at it like that. So let's imagine he did own the board. Everyone now uses a monetary system that allows everyone to trade with each other. This person here, maybe conceivably short term, is now becoming excessively rich because, of course, everyone's banking through him. But that's okay, because what we've all failed to realise is that the board of the Monopoly game of life is actually a finite game, just like in Monopoly. Now, in Monopoly, what would happen, as I'm sure you know, is that some smarmy git will end up winning and will take absolute pleasure in the fact that they have won. And they won't even allow the game to end early when it becomes clear that they're going to win. No, they won't do that. It's better for them to let the game continue to its ultimate end, in which there is simply no money left and they own the money. That's the worst kind of person to play Monopoly with. But still, that's what Monopoly is. It's the nature of the game, isn't it? It's the nature of the game, and it mirrors life in such a fantastic way that I shall continue whatever it was I was saying. So he now owns, let's just say, the 100%. The world banking system is now owned by one person. So that means all the money's running through the bank. So where do we see this going? Where do people think it's going to end? Well, let's imagine. Meanwhile, what happened was a lot of the population that lives around the Monopoly board we've got economic migrants and stuff. They've migrated into different areas, and so what we've now got is a patchy landscape of places. But typically, what would happen is, and I don't want to say westernized. Think of this as, if we're all just sat here in our houses, in front of a computer, or on your phone, or on your tablet, that kind of lifestyle suggests that we're living in relative comfort. Obviously, we have to go out and work, we have to contribute to society, because that's the way the world works. If we contribute to society, we're rewarded with money, and with money we can go off and buy more stuff, and so on and so forth. Now, if this is a lifestyle that you subscribe to, you could say that that's going rather well at the moment. Now, obviously, more people in the world are seeing that. The people, for example, that are coming through Mexico trying to get into America can see there's a lifestyle to be had. I mean, why would we deny someone the opportunity to be able to live like us? That's the question. So these immigrants that we see, whether they be economic immigrants, or just immigrants of another nature. I know I said the same thing twice there, didn't I? But basically, any kind of immigrant is obviously someone who's trying to get away from something. So, and they can see that the grass appears to be greener on the other side, because we're all just sat around doing nothing, or maybe we're working, but we're ultimately just to be able to sit around and watch telly with our feet up, and some people can't do that. So we can't deny that people want to do that. And so what happens is these people all migrate. And let's just say that now this section of the board, for argument's sake, is now a place that no one really lives at. It's an underdeveloped existence, in the sense that, like, for example, everyone here has got widescreen TVs, that kind of thing. And again, the world doesn't revolve around that, but if everyone had a widescreen TV, that would suggest that we're all able to sit there and watch it. And that, again, suggests a level of comfort, which I don't think it's unreasonable that people can live in comfort. So if this area of the world, as it stands right now, once the World Bank own it, and it's now war-torn and whatever, because that's what happened, then these people have all managed to get out of that. They've all gone around the Monopoly board, they've spread out, and finally we're at a point where the numbers start to settle down. Because again, meanwhile, what's been happening with all this, incidentally, is that we've been having a population growth, and the world population is estimated to settle at around 10 billion people. So in the completion of our game, 10 billion people now live on the world. It settles down. It'll fluctuate, no doubt, but once it settles down, the estimated figure is going to be 10 billion. 10 billion people will occupy all of this. One guy owns everything. But here comes the problem, because what's happening is, meanwhile, life goes on, doesn't it? So all these people that live around here are all trying to make their lives that bit better. And we're doing it right now. What we've done is we've invented machines that can build things, and what's happened is there's now, if we just pretend this is Detroit again, I think this is what happened with Detroit. I could be wrong, but if it is wrong, it's just use this as an analogy. But I'm sure what happened in Detroit was all the manufacturers and everyone kind of left. But it's use it as an analogy. Let's imagine that all the manufacturers, instead of just leaving, didn't leave as such, but they just simply automated the machines, because of what's really happening in the world is more and more things are able to be automated. And eventually what we're going to end up is with machines that can do the jobs that most of us would be, just take for granted. For example, I mean, it's easy to, let's see, well, you've got things like your postal system. Obviously we still use post, but we use it less so now, because of course we can communicate so much better. Obviously goods can be delivered, but we've already seen that we can automate cars and we can automate drones. And so, this is the world of today, where we're just beginning to do stuff. I would say to you that maybe 10 years from now, we're going to be in a world where a lot of the stuff that we do, it's just going to be automated. I mean, for example, when I go to Tesco, and I find that it's not busy with customers, it's busy with Tesco staff shopping on behalf of customers that have ordered their stuff online, and you can barely bloody move. It just seems like everywhere is just Tesco staff shopping. Could you imagine that as your job? Your job is to literally fill out someone's shopping into a trolley all day, every day. Most depressing version of a job of the work, and it is, isn't it? Now, now, does that job need to be manual labour? Well, no, not really. If we've got a warehouse, and we've seen probably Amazon, isn't it? Really, if you take the Amazon warehouse, it's an automated warehouse. It's got a few people in, I guess. To be fair, I don't know. I've seen pictures in which these warehouses are automated. I don't know about Amazon, but the technology's there. And in 10 years' time, it's probably going to be the default thing. Why have a person in a warehouse when you can have a computer roboty thing that can do it 10 times faster, and more efficiently? And so, conceivably, we would have a Tesco warehouse in which a computer would pick your shopping, put it into a bag, and then that gets loaded into a Tesco lorry, which drives itself to your house. And then, it knows when you're in because your phone's on, so it knows that you're home, so it can then tell you to come and get your shopping out the lorry. So far, there's been no interaction with any human at all, So there's a very good potential. My cat's now looking at me as if to say, are you completely mad? Because she doesn't appreciate the subtleties of me talking to the computer. So she'll just throw the cat. Anyway, so we automate lots of the jobs, and in the next 10 to 15 years, these jobs are going to get even more and more automated. And once we make machines that can make even more efficient versions of the machines, AI that they're all going on about is a great tool, because imagine if I said, well, look, this is how I pack an egg into a box, and the AI says, yeah, you could do it like that, but actually it's more efficient if you did it like this. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh God, oh my God. That's right, isn't it? So AI could help design better things that we've not really conceived of at the moment. So back to the Monopoly board. What's going to happen is there's going to be less work. That's right, people. There's 10 billion people. On a numbers game, there simply isn't enough jobs for us all. And especially when we consider that we're going to automate everything. So now everything's been automated. This area has no people in. These areas have now got all the people in, but there's not enough jobs because, maybe now, by then, it's just enough jobs for these people to work on a numbers game. What the hell are all these people going to do? So what's happening now is that Sir Alan Sugar is in a position, isn't he? He's stuck. There's no way that he can keep this ecosystem built around money going, because logistically there's just not enough work for people to do. And as we automate more things, there's less work for people to do. And sure enough, as time goes on, and I'm talking maybe it's 100 years away, I don't know, but to be fair, I don't see why it has to be that long. But as time goes on, I think we're going to get to a point where eventually Sir Alan Sugar is going to declare that there is no money, because by then we'll be back to a society of this simply isn't enough work for everyone to do. And so now we're going to be in a more of a community, aren't we? We're going to go back to a community. We're going to say, well, look, there isn't enough work for everyone to do, but there's enough work for everyone to do if we all do, if we all do work. There's less work for everyone if everyone does the work. Essentially, if there was, we're doing now quarters, aren't we? So let's do thirds. If there's only 1/3 of the jobs that there used to be. Well, if everybody did 1/3 of that work, you would get some kind of, I'm sure someone's going to say, you've done your maths wrong on that one, Mike, but still. So that's interesting. So I think we're going to get back to a society that's not built around money. Now, this is where Sir Alan Sugar comes in. And again, this isn't Sir Alan Sugar. I'm going to click this because it keeps telling me to zoom in. How big is it really? It's that big. Not terribly exciting, but still. So Sir Alan Sugar, meanwhile, is like, well, I've got all this money, and he's got a few options. Now, if he is just centred around the money, he's obviously going to be of the opinion that this is a bad idea because I can't make as much money. But this is the downside of owning the Monopoly. At some point in the Monopoly board, there is no more money. It just doesn't work in the life game of Monopoly, because again, there's simply not enough jobs. No jobs means there's no money. We either end up with 2/3 of the board now in poverty, which obviously isn't any good for Sir Alan Sugar, because he's like, well, hang on a minute, if everyone was working, I'm making money. If no one's working, I'm not making any money. How's this going to work? Well, is two options, and he either proceeds with the I need to make money plan, or he starts to realise that if he invests this fantastic amount of money that he seems to have into the world, which arguably you could say he has done, because there's an investment that's taken place to get us to where we are today, and if in 100 years the world's at peace and no one has to work full-time jobs anymore, you could argue that's a better world to live in. If poverty doesn't exist, in 100 years, is it I know pain and suffering today. I'm not saying we should have wars to justify it, but if in 100 years we had no wars, but somehow the monopoly board was complete, and it turned out there was just no poverty, because essentially there was no money. The money was secondary to quality of life. Everyone had a quality of life. If that was the end game, I'm saying that maybe that's worth it. So obviously, we don't know the motivations behind Sir Alan Sugar. This isn't Sir Alan Sugar. I keep having to feel like I should say this isn't Sir Alan Sugar, just in case someone actually thinks I'm talking about Sir Alan Sugar. But this is our token gesture, Sir Alan Sugar. But I feel like, regardless of his end game, the world will not. It can't carry on in its current model. So there you go. That's my theory, if you like, of the banking system that we're all going on about. We're going on about the elites of the world. How long can they remain elites for? It just doesn't work, especially with the world that we live in now, in which yes, there are elites perhaps that own the banking system, but equally there are people who are rich and perhaps considered elites, although not necessarily in the same category of elites, because of course these are the innovators, the creators. They're the ones that are making the tech's changing the way we live our lives, and eventually that tech will be the thing we depend upon. But would you buy it? You need it. Once you bought it once, it's going to be good tech. I don't know. It's an interesting theory. What do you think about that? So, I thought it was quite interesting, really. I think it's an interesting way to demonstrate where we could be. I know is it one world banking, whatever it is that people are going on about. I think it just highlight that there is a finite amount of things you can do. You can't keep it going. It's impossible. If you kept the banking system going for another 100 years, it surely would become futile, wouldn't it? You really it's like, well, why are you going to do that? What would be the benefit? Because there's no more to be had. And you could say, well, these guys can just make the money. You might say, but they own these own the treasury. Sir Alan Sugar owns all the money making places, Mike. They just make more money. But again, it's like, yeah, but the money's irrelevant all of a sudden, because it's just nonsensical, isn't it? It gets to a point of nonsense. That's why with prices, you think, well, the prices keep going up. So you need more money. But, in the reality of things, it's nonsensical, isn't it, really? You could see a time where money gets replaced with a credit system. And I think once you get to this credit system, you really are seeing you've peaked. Because if money's got no value, and you have to now change it to a credit system, it's just like, well, really, we're just chasing the dragon. And maybe it's at that point where the people of the world would say, bollocks, we're not doing credits, we're doing a third of the work, everyone's going to contribute, and we're just going to live life and be peaceful. There's still innovation, people will still do stuff, people will still invent stuff, there'll be no problems, there's plenty of resources. It's just a great world, isn't it? It's a great world. I don't know how long this video's gone on for. I think I've probably lost most of the viewership by the third or fourth minute. Still, there you go. Leave a comment if you made it this far. Just saying that you made it this far. In fact, all you have to do, if you've made it this far, is leave a comment. And if you just say the word Baltic, as in Baltic Avenue, I assume this is a place well known in America for some reason, and it's not a well-to-do place. It's the cheapest place on the board. So just leave the word Baltic if you made it this far. That'll be our little secret. No one else will know. And that's it. So congratulations if you made it this far. I am going to end the video now. I think I've pretty much made... I'm going to have to watch this video now to see if any of that made sense. Gosh, I don't even know how long the video is. Ugh. Oh well, thanks again. And, you know, join in, go on to the comments and let's have a discussion. It's interesting, isn't it? I have this discussion. I didn't have the discussion this week because it was the wife's birthday. So I'm now doing it with the internet instead. So there you go, internet. That's my theory. What's yours?